Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscaboo Horror Reviews here with a review for an Italian horror film from 1980. I'm talking about Patrick Still Lives. Now, this film is a unofficial sequel to the Australian horror film from 1978, Patrick, which was about a comatose psychopath who uses telekinesis to kill people who try to get close to a nurse who takes care of him, who he has fallen in love with. Now, when Patrick was released, it did well in its home country, but it flopped everywhere else, except for Italy for some specific reason. Due to that, some crazy Italian guy decided to make a low-budget, unofficial sequel and make it even more violent and sexually explicit, even though the first one wasn't that explicit or violent or in any way, really. It was fairly reserved and relied heavily on the characters, on the depth of the characters, as well as the tension and kind of atmosphere that the film builds, which I think it does a decent job of. Now, the first Patrick film, like I just said, is actually a pretty good film. It's well made, tense, creepy, doesn't overstay its welcome, and I like to call the film the Australian Carrie. So, now we have a film that is practically a remake, which gives us Patrick's origins, and it's also partially shot at the mansion that Burial Ground Night of Terror is shot in. And as you guys know, Burial Ground Night of Terror is absolutely, like, up there when it comes to my favorite Italian zombie films. So, essentially the plot of this film is that Patrick gets in an accident at the beginning of the film, and what puts him in the coma is, like, so hilariously, like, out of place and just doesn't work. Like, it does not work in any sense of reality or realism, so it's kind of funny to, it's kind of hilarious, honestly. And he ends up in the basement of this mansion that I'm pretty sure like his father owns or something, and he's being taken care of by his father, who is trying to kind of help him, who happens to be a doctor. And there are people who are also staying at the mansion at the same time, and Patrick kind of senses their presence and doesn't like them, so he starts killing them off one by one. The acting in this film is fairly subpar, and same goes for the writing. Honestly, this film is pretty bad overall, but I would not say it's not without its level of merit. They definitely, it seems like they tried at least. Really, anybody who watches this film is going to want to see it to see how in the hell they could do a sequel to Patrick and not tread old ground with it, which is something that they do kind of do with the plot of this film, or rely on the tension and characters and atmosphere like the first film. They know they didn't have much in the tension or character depth department, so they figured, sex, gore, colorful lighting, that would work. And let me just say, yeah, it does, and this movie overall is good for a laugh. The pacing of the film is okay, it never really gets boring, there's occasionally moments where it drags, where it's trying to develop the characters that are just undevelopable and you just don't care about them at all. The music in the film ranges in quality. It mostly leans towards being good, and sometimes even, like, legit creepy. It sounds like a combination of, like, a science fiction horror soundtrack and a giallo soundtrack, which works considering this film is kind of a science fiction film, and I would go as far to call this film like a slasher film or a giallo film. As far as the kills go, there's some pretty grisly, memorable kills in here, like being boiled alive in a pool or decapitation by car window. The gore effects are pretty decent overall. They're pretty good, pretty solid. You know, nothing super amazing. It's no Tom Savini, it's no Lucio Fulci, but it gets the job done, and there are a couple scenes in particular that are pretty infamous for being kind of just crazy, considering this is a sequel to some, you know, quiet, reserved film from Australia. On the gore meter from 1 to 10, 1 being something like Nosferatu, 10 being something like Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, Patrick Still Lives sits at about a 4. It's not necessarily super gory, but it's got some gore, and it's there are a few scenes in particular that are pretty like shocking and grisly and rough, considering I went into this film knowing that there were some crazy gore scenes, and I was still pretty shocked by one of them in particular, involving an impalement with an iron rod, and that's all I'm going to say. Now, while this film is definitely bad, it's definitely not something that's worth your time if you like to spend your time watching stuff like Seven Samurai or Citizen Kane. That being said, I do like those films. Patrick Still Lives is a very much a still watchable, very watchable film. And it's really just an honestly fun cheese fest full of sex, violence, and sleaze, which is all you need in a film like this. While it's not the best unofficial Italian sequel to ever be made, I probably would say the best unofficial Italian sequel to any film would probably be Lucio Fulci's Zombie or Contamination. This film is still really enjoyable. It's enjoyable. It's worth a watch if unofficial Italian sequels are your thing, if low-budget splatter is your thing, if you saw the first Patrick and you thought, yeah, this is an okay movie, but it needs more sex and violence and colorful giallo lighting, then yeah, this is definitely something I would recommend. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a 3 out of 5. It's fairly entertaining, fairly quality, despite the quality and its entertainment value, despite the production being very low budget. But anyway, guys, that is it for this one. This is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.